Welcome, everybody. I'm Sarup Mathur. I'm working very closely with Betty G, as many of you have already known. I'm learning all the ropes, and she's just sort of walking me through the process. And this happens to be one of the things that we do in this role. And so this is the third year of doing this particular task, and it's the third one that we're doing for this year. Can you believe that? That's so cool. And for those who are new to this just an hour, I just wanted to sort of give you a little bit of a context. This was conceptualized by our previous Associate Dean Scholarship, and then Betty and Quinya were putting this together every single week, or maybe it was every 2 weeks or so forth. And then now we are just keeping it among all the deans, associate deans, so they are just coming with different topics. You know, we had last time when we met, we had one time Ivana, another time Quinya. So it's open to all faculty, doctoral students, and the idea is to really get to know about a variety of experiences within our college and see where our scholarship is heading, what everybody's doing, learning from experiences and aspirations of everybody who participates in this space. So we want to keep this interactive. So there is no formal structure to it. Just, have a few prompts where we sort of generate some conversations around that. And we usually start with some kind of announcements, and Betty will be announcing some of the things that are happening already or have happened or are going to happen. So, Betty.
Good to see all of you for our session today, where we're going to be chatting with a couple of our new tenure track faculty. But first, just a couple reminders. I think, as you all know, we have our first all-college meeting of the year next Friday. That's September 27th. And we do have a gathering and lunch for associate professors and a separate gathering for new full-time faculty. If you are in one of those groups, you should have received an invitation. If you did not, for any reason, please feel free to reach out to me or Sarup. Our email list for the associate professors in particular was a little outdated. So we're looking forward to seeing a lot of folks there. The one other thing I'd like to just remind you of and encourage you to attend if you have any interest at all is on Friday, October 25th, Avetta is facilitating a session at 1:00 on, it's titled Global Intensive Experiences and Study Abroad. And she's invited Noah Rost and Shira Burns to talk more specifically about how faculty can go about proposing, designing, and actually carrying out study abroad courses, which is a really cool opportunity. The meeting coincides nicely with the Just an Hour topic that day, in which we've invited several of our Teachers College faculty who've actually done that. They've created and facilitated study abroad courses to share their experiences and show you that it is indeed feasible and fun. There is a lot of demand. In fact, one reason for doing this is we're having a lot of our students take study abroad courses outside of the college. So there's, I think, an unmet demand within the college for courses that are designed by our faculty. So please put that on your calendar. You should have received a calendar invitation for the 1:00 session. If not, reach out to me or Avetta, and we can forward that to you. So I think that's it for announcements. Sarup, shall I turn it over to you to introduce our guests today and the topic?
Yes, sure. So once again, we welcome our new guests here. And the first one we have is Pablo Bezem. He's an assistant professor in the Division of Educational Leadership and Innovation. He earned his PhD in education policy from Michigan State University as a Fulbright Fellow. and he was an assistant professor at the University of Massachusetts, Lowell, and he conducted his postdoctoral research at the University of California, Irvine. And our second faculty member is Kathleen Thorius, professor and director of the Learning Futures Collaboratives. She joins us from Indiana University, Indianapolis, where she founded the Great Lakes Equity Center, among other accomplishments. She's an ASU graduate, so that's sort of a homecoming for her. And she's figuring out how to navigate the many changes on campus, because things have changed a lot. So with that, I just give it to you, Betty, to start the conversation with our faculty members.
Thanks, Sarup. And welcome, welcome, Pablo and Kathleen. We're delighted to have you here. As I think most of you know, and as Sarup said earlier, this is an informal session. We've prepared some prompts that we've shared with our guests beforehand that we'll use to stimulate some conversation. But I encourage everyone here to post comments or questions in the chat. If anything that comes up stimulates, your thoughts, share resources or things like that. If anything crosses your mind that might be relevant for Pablo and Kathleen as they're getting used to our interesting campus. And I was telling Kathleen, who's been saying, my gosh, I keep getting lost on campus. There's buildings where nothing used to exist before, that I have that experience every day. It seems like I go out and a building has popped up overnight. So we all can appreciate the challenges of adjusting to ASU's rapidly changing physical, as well as other sorts of environments here. But we're going to start by asking each of our guests to first just say a little bit more about who you are and the work that you do, and then what got you interested in that work. And I think I'll start with Pablo, who, as Sarup was talking, I realized you've lived in almost every part of our country so far. Pablo is originally from Argentina, right? But you've been East Coast, Midwest, and West Coast. So I don't know. Hopefully you won't be leaving us for the South anytime soon. This is hopefully further south enough for you. So, but
yes,
let me
turn
it over.
all over the country, and hopefully this is the last destination. So very happy to be here. Nice to meet you all. So about the broad topic in which I'm focusing on now, I work on issues of education policy and governance, and I'm interested in how local government support and accountability policies can promote organizational change in schools. And much of my focus in my current work is on the relationships of trust and collaboration between the school districts and the schools. As Betty mentioned, I'm originally from Argentina. I think I didn't have the most typical academic trajectory. I'm an old assistant professor. I have been working in education policy issues, conducting research for more than 15 years. I used to work in a big NGO in Argentina with a focus on equity and educational finance, on the question on how educational systems tend to reproduce social inequalities. And one of the things I enjoy about my work there is the possibility of working very closely with governments at the federal level, at the provincial level, and also working with a lot of schools and communities. And I think conducting all this research in Argentina was a way of getting close to school and see the challenges that principals face in their daily life, that the school face, and how the local government try to address all these issues. When I came to the US, I found that many of the issues and the struggles are the same, but maybe one difference has to do with the system of high-stake accountability that you have here. That's something different. You have one of the most developed infrastructure of test-based accountability around the world. And when you talk with anybody in the US about school accountability, what they think is in this managerial view of school accountability, where you focus on outcomes and high stakes. There are more more than that, there are alternative approaches to accountability. One that I'm particularly interested in is low-stake professional accountability that have to do with educators giving feedback to colleagues and putting the child at the center. So the first time that I have this idea of working on issues on school accountability in the US, interestingly, came from a study trip with my university, with my PhD program in Cuba, when I learned about their school inspection system. And it wasn't interesting because I thought that you can apply this system in the US. That's not the case. But it helped me gaining perspective about different approaches to school accountability and about the role of human interactions when you are implementing policy. And in this case, a relationship between the government and the school. And this is one of the reasons why I really value international comparative work, because it allows you to gain these broader perspectives. So in my work, I'm, as I mentioned, I'm working on the US system of high-stake accountability. And it departs from this idea that many districts are only focusing on enacting accountability mandates, setting incentive and sanctions based on standardized tests, and hoping that school will improve. And in many cases, school districts are not really these school improvement organizations. And one of the consequences of this is that this really affect the relationship between districts and schools, and within schools as well. There is a lot of pressure, there is a lot of distrust between districts and schools, and in general, the marginalized communities are the most that have more pressure and more eroded relationships. So what I'm proposing is that considering other approaches to school accountability, having maybe more frequent low-stakes interaction between the districts and the school through school visits, frequent check-in, whole leadership meetings. For example, it's a way of building relationship of trust and collaboration between the districts and the school. So I just submitted a grant, and what I'm proposing, and I'm finishing with this, it's a top-to-bottom social network intervention at the district level to examine how having more of this low-stakes interaction between school and district might improve a relationship of trust and collaboration between the districts and between the school. Also, explore how this might help reducing leadership turnover and policy churn, and ultimately improve also student outcomes.
Thanks so much, Pablo. That's a great overview, fascinating topic. And it's just going to encourage everyone here, if you can think of folks that Pablo should connect with. I mean, I see all sorts of potential relationships to work that other folks are doing. So just drop names or suggestions into the chat. I think that would be super, super helpful. So Kathleen, you're up next. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Great. Thank you, Betty. Thank you, Sarup. And thanks to everybody for all the warm welcomes I've received so far here at ASU. Some of you may know I did my doctorate here. I wrapped up in 2009. I was working with Alfredo Artiles, Elizabeth Kozlowski, and some others. And part of that work was around national technical assistance projects that were funded out of the U.S. Department of Education and the Office of Special Education Programs to address inequities in special education. So I'm going to go way back to 6th grade and tell a little story about being the first person in my family to go to college, to complete college. My mom had a friend, kind of a long lost friend situation, reach out and was going to be in town for the weekend and came over and had lunch. And I listened to the conversation and she was talking about her work. It was not anything I was familiar with. And at the end of their conversation, and as my mom's friend got up to leave, she handed my mom a business card. And it was the first time I ever saw a business card. I grew up in a blue-collar family. It was also the first time I saw all those letters after somebody's name. And the person's name was Kathleen, like me. And she was a clinical psychologist. And I grew up in a family, without revealing too much of my family's business out in the open. I grew up in a family where disability, and particularly mental health disabilities, were prominent, and they really impacted our family dynamic internally to my immediate family and then extended family. And as I was making sense in my like 12 or 13-year-old mind of what I might want to do with my life in that moment, I thought, well, that's something I could do actually that maybe would be of use, and maybe I could figure that out, like how that could help in my own family situation. And so fast forward, I went to college in Syracuse at Lemoyne College, a small liberal arts college, and studied psychology and went into school of psychology as a graduate student right after that in Massachusetts. What I didn't know, though, was that I was going to enter into a system where how disability was defined and by whom, and the ways that racism and ableism really colluded in those spaces to stratify and sort children into different kinds of knowers, into having different levels of potential, into access and constraints around opportunity, how that was going to play out in special education. And so I entered into the field with a sort of like stance of benevolence. I'm going to go do good. And I had participated over time then as a school psychologist in Boston and in Phoenix here in these systems where, as much as there were many, many good intentions, there were also very negative impacts on children, particularly in a border state where the ways that ability was defined really were very much tainted by notions of ableism and racism individually, in individual interactions and in systemic actions. And so I was really unhappy with my role and my work. There were a lot of situations, I've written about some of them, where I found myself in places where I didn't have the tools or really the theoretical or the practical language to understand what I was seeing and experiencing. But I was seeing special education rates that were very high. I was feeling pressure to essentially gatekeep children into special education where teachers were making assumptions about their capabilities on the basis of very little information. And I knew I needed some new tools. And so I found my way to ASU, where I worked with those folks I mentioned earlier in these systems and these centers that were working alongside practitioners, scholars, students, teachers, families to really excavate all of the contributing factors historically and currently that were colluding and coming together in these inequitable systems. So that is what my work has been about since 2009 when I graduated, and leading up to that time. It's understanding and working alongside educators, many of whom are white and non-disabled like me, to think about the ways we were socialized into the field of special education, to think about the assumptions we have about disability, the assumptions we have about race, about competence and capability, and to, as gently but also consequentially as possible, to help folks excavate those underlying assumptions. And as we do that, engage in a process of learning and change at the individual and the systemic level. So that kind of leads to my second area, which has to do with the policies and the practices that can really disrupt some of those patterns and then remediate our systems with a focus on systems. Special education has very much been about remediating children. I come to this field with this idea that, yes, there may be negative consequences that come from disability, but most of those consequences have to do with the environments, the attitudes, and the belief systems that disabled people encounter in their daily lives. And so my work on the sort of the other side has been around this idea of technical assistance, something I call equity expansive technical assistance. I draw from cultural historical activity and social theory and social cultural theories to work alongside systemic educators to do that excavation, but then also to develop inclusively ways of generating solutions to what's been happening. Many times that's around disproportionality in special education and discipline. Sometimes it's about the language we even use to, or the ways we construct and define partnerships with families and communities. And I've led a number of regional and national technical assistance projects since 2011 when I was at Indiana University. So coming here, I'm really excited to bring those experiences, but also the network here. Even when I was hearing you talk, Pablo, we have these connections that I didn't even really understand. Of course, I don't fully understand yet, but around working alongside government agencies who are responsible for schooling, getting into accountability structures, how there are these zones that sort of shape what educators feel that they're able to do or not able to do. And so many connections there, but I'm thrilled to be here, and thanks for the opportunity to go back to 6th grade with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for such a great linkage that you have created with your work and what Pablo has been doing. That's a great connection that you have seen. So now the next question that we have is, so what are you most looking forward to in your work at MLFTC? Pablo, do you want to take the first shot?
Yes, of course. So I'm really looking forward to moving forward with my research agenda here at ASU for several reasons. So I think it's a great fit for me. I was really excited to see how much collaboration and interdisciplinary work there is here. So as I mentioned before, I used to work in this NGO that have different offices with different specialization, health, fiscal policy, social policy, and we really do collaborative work. We really do big project and work together, conducting interdisciplinary work. So that was great. Another thing that I saw the work that you are doing with the Learning Future Collaborative and the Starter for the Whole Child, and it's great to see how much collaboration is there going on here. So another thing that I really appreciate about the school that I'm looking forward to is to see how much importance you give to having a global view of research and conducting international work. As I mentioned, my work has to do with collaborating with the school and district, but I also conduct international comparative work. And also, as I mentioned before, I think that is great to gain a broader perspective of things. So I really appreciate that. And finally, how much work ASU is conducting with districts and community. That's something that aligns very well with my work. So that's something else that I'm very excited about. And before finishing, I would like to make an announcement. So related to what you say, Betty, I made my mission this year to contact as many faculty members as I can. I really want to be part of the research community, and this is a huge school with over 100 faculty members. It's hard to know what everybody does just by what you can read online. So if you see any possibilities, any overlap in our interests, possibility of collaborating, please just write me and let's have a coffee. I would love to. So thank you.
That's great. We've already getting to see some suggestions here in the chat for collaboration. So that's awesome. Kathleen?
Yeah, very cool. And in part, some of those same things that Pablo has said. But I also want to say, there are people here I've wanted to work with for a long time. And it's not just about who they are and what they've done as individuals. It's about the collectives they've been part of. And it feels to me, and I'm seeing that and feeling that so far in my few short weeks being here, that the possibilities that come with I'll say dynamicism of the unit and of the college or of the university do lend themselves to creativity. And I'm hoping pushing the boundaries of the academy and thinking about who belongs as knowledge generators and as people who know through multiple methodologies. So I'm going to give a couple examples. I've known Sherman's work forever. I have a lot of questions for Sherman in another just an hour, but for me, your work has always been around pushing the boundaries of special education and inclusive education and talking about, even with some people who I'll say, maybe have some different methodologies than you do, questioning how social justice is defined and even appropriated sometimes in special education. The theory that you bring into the conversation in a field that has been very much focused on particular theories, I feel like you've expanded our field, and I'm really excited to be here with you. I'm excited to be in a place where, like Joetta, you were a leader in many spaces, but from schools to districts to like super, big districts in various parts of the country, who know what everyday educators and leaders are dealing with as they navigate the really challenging sociopolitical context of public schooling in particular, and then leading the Equity Alliance around that work. That you're here leading also program design, to me, is incredible, because it shows the flexibility and the ways that I'm hoping that this college is pushing the boundaries of the academy. And so with that, that's what I'm excited about. I'm full professor. That's really exciting to me. That's relatively new. I was glad that worked out here too. And I'll continue to do my own personal work around my scholarship, but to be in a place now where my job is to be a thought partner, and my job is to help people navigate bureaucracies and be a conduit to resources, and to connect people. I'm thrilled to have that opportunity. So the Learning Futures Collaboratives for me were just super exciting because of how dynamic they are, because of how inclusive they are seeming, and because the possibilities that come with them. I'm looking forward to bringing even more resources. I mean, I would love for ASU and Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College to be known for the largest, most inclusive and accessible body of open access scholarship that exists, not just in traditional formats, but in formats that people can actually use, like today, if they need something to do something, when any number of things may be happening in our current sociopolitical context. I'm thrilled to be here and explore that question with you all further, maybe over coffee. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks so much, Kathleen. Love the excitement from both of you, Pablo as well, about the opportunities that you see for yourself here, and yay for our great colleagues, which I have to second and third. We do have a fabulous faculty here, and you both are helping to make it even more fabulous. So it's great. Okay, so now we're shifting a bit and just going to ask you to respond to the question about your own research. So we're glad you're excited to be here. What really excites you about the work that you're doing now, your research? So, and to mix it up, let me start with Kathleen. So what excites you about the particular line of scholarship that you're doing?
Right. So I'll build on some of the things I was also already talking about as it pertains to technical assistance. I'm not going to give a lesson on what technical assistance is. You can kind of imagine. But we've been doing a lot of work around this idea that we need new ways of thinking about being a partner with folks who are undergoing systemic change. And so part of this work, most of this work is usually doing the work. You are struggling with difficult questions. You are looking at expanded forms of data. You are questioning why contexts haven't been beneficial for all youth or families in a particular school system, for example. And that takes so much energy, and it takes a lot of time. It also is vulnerable for educators and for folks who are alongside them. And that vulnerability is differential too, depending on who we are and the different privileges that we have that sort of protect us from risk, the privileges of the academy as well. So one of the things I'm really excited about and have been engaging the last few years is writing about this process, theorizing about this process of technical assistance in a way that is hopefully useful for other people who are struggling in the midst of systemic change. And so we had a book come out in 2023, just last year, to that effect. And we're continuing to engage in studies with school districts that maybe started with a particular concern about suspension rates. And over a 3 or 5 year relationship, their focus has expanded intensively. And there have been multiple policy and practice changes that have measurably, in a lot of different measures, made school a better place for students. So we're trying to document those things through a number of studies. So that's part of it. We've written a couple grants. Jill and I put in a grant with Julie Casper, who is on one of the Learning Futures collaboratives, for a national content center on multilingualism and English learning with folks from NYU and from Stanford. We're waiting to hear back on that. I probably shouldn't jinx it, but in the next couple of days, we should be hearing about that. That will be an opportunity for us to create research-based resources for state departments of education who are engaging in planning and workforce development and all sorts of things around multilingualism. And then finally, I'm doing some shifting in my focus toward bringing educators and learners, students together to talk together about their experiences rather than treating teaching and learning as separate. So we have a project that we're getting off the ground right now that has to do with working with students of color with disability labels, whether or not they identify as disabled personally or their families do, and their teachers in English language arts in particular, and the ways that they're experiencing being affirmed through content and curriculum and instruction for who they are and the whole of who they are. To explore that together with them is really exciting, and I look forward to sharing more about that when we get a little bit further along. But that's, I think, my next turn in my scholarship will be teacher and learner learning together, and positioning both as having expertise, certainly, and knowledge alongside the researchers who are partnering with them in that inquiry.
Thanks so much, Kathleen. Really cool work. And what's also exciting to see is how your work is evolving, which we don't perhaps talk about enough across our careers, is how we're building on what we know and making shifts to explore new areas as they emerge. So thank you for that. Pablo, what excites you the most about your research?
I think I get especially excited when I start with the new projects and it's all possibilities. And I'm especially excited about this new project I told you about that I'm launching. So it's a big project working with the school districts, and I really enjoy this kind of project. It has to do with the work that I've done back in Argentina and also during my postdoc, where we work with a lot of community colleges. So I'm excited about this project. I'm excited that I brought together people I really wanted to work with, and so far having these exchanges of ideas, this stimulated conversation, that's very exciting to me as well. Speaking with the superintendents to see where I can implement this project, the perspective of working with schools and communities. All this for me is very, very exciting and energizing as well.
Great, thanks. And I know there's some folks here who could probably make great connections and would love to talk more about this kind of work. Are you connected with school districts here? I can't recall. Did you say that or no?
I'm trying to do that. I'm trying to speak with faculty members that have projects on the ground and trying to make connections. Okay,
great. I think some folks here can make some recommendations for you for sure. So yeah. So Sarup, shall we move on to the next prompt?
Yeah. I just sort of want to contextualize it. We all get so involved in doing our own research because we're so passionate about this, and including myself. I mean, my work has been in the area of juvenile delinquency, and so oftentimes I would go to these conferences and I would find that initially only maybe 2 or 3 people would come thinking that this is not a topic of our interest. We don't have to know about it because, they had other things going on in their lives. So I just want to know from your side, you're doing so much, so much work, you're so passionate about it. What are some of the things you would like other people to know about your research? Like I used to feel like it took me like 10 years to have some audience in that room. And that became because when I started to ask hand raises, hey, have you had anybody go in a detention facility within your family, within neighborhood, and then started to feel like, oh my gosh, then it became closer to home. Similar to that, kids with special needs, it's just, you feel like it's something else, happening somewhere else. So what do you want people to know about your research?
So on the one hand, it's more conceptual, and the other part is more practical. Maybe conceptually, I work on issues of school accountability, and I think one of the things that for me is very important people to understand conceptually is that the changes are socially constructed. So that's where I have this strong interest in the relationship between the school districts and the schools, and then this idea that complex policy implementation requires a system view. So network theory, a complex theory, show that if you want to implement complex change, you really have to see the system as a whole. And I really appreciate that perspective in the work that I'm proposing. I'm trying to analyze the social networks, considering the teacher to the superintendent. You have social networks between the districts and the schools, and these social networks tend to be like reproduced to some degree in the schools as well. So I would like people to understand this network complex view of the whole system. And then in terms of policy, or in more practical terms, I think it has to do with the system of test-based accountability that you have in the US, that the few pieces that have addressed the overall result of having these policies have showed that the outcome has been really, really modest in terms of student outcomes, and this is a system that really conditions the dynamic of the school, the relationship between the districts and the schools, and within the schools, there is a lot of distrust. Schools are principals and teachers work under fear. There is a lot of pressure. And there's also a very narrow academic focus when you have these strong incentives. So thinking of alternative systems, that's what I'm proposing. I'm thinking of a different role that district can have more as a school improvement organization, collaborating with school. I think this can harness the power of human resources from the districts and the school to think of improvement, can lead to more healthy environment in the schools, to have a focus more on the whole child and not only on a narrow set of academic topics, and hopefully it will have an impact also in reducing opportunity gaps and giving an opportunity to marginalized communities.
Okay, so yeah, obviously a lot of complexity layers, right? So keeping all that in mind. So Kathleen, how would you like people to understand your work?
Thanks, Sarup. I'm still surprised. I still get caught off guard when people say that they're reading my work. Like we were in the D2 meeting and Tony mentioned something. And I was like, wow, thank you. Because it still feels new and exciting. And I guess if that ever happens where I'm not surprised or not excited, then it's time for me to hang it up, because it is what a privilege it is to be in a position where we can have ideas that we get to share with people. One of the things that I'm hopeful for, Sarup, and I think I could probably speak to just you on this, and everyone else may or may not appreciate it, but is for people to engage with my work beyond the title. or beyond what they think they know about my work. And for those of you who, and I don't expect that you're familiar with it, but I have pieces that I've written that are about some of the things I talked about, how special education can function, that folks inside the field have perceived as very threatening to the legitimacy of the field in and of itself. And what I would encourage is that to actually engage with the ideas that are in the pieces themselves. They may have a bit of a different perspective. But I'm gonna pose a question to the group that kind of hopefully maybe brings some of this to light. So I was a school psychologist in Phoenix in the Alhambra School District. Some of you may be familiar with it. It was at 35th Avenue in between Camelback, was it an Indian school and Glendale, somewhere in that area. The schools were, there were 15 schools. So when I said to people what I did, when they say, what do you do? And I say, I'm a school psychologist in the Alhambra School District. What are some of the things you think people said back to me? And I'll ask that another way. What do you think people say when a special education teacher in New York City says, I'm a special education teacher in New York City Public Schools? What do you think people say back to them? Anyone want to throw an answer out there? Joetta,
it takes a special person.
It takes a special person.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what my wife got all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, you must be so caring and patient.
Yeah. So if we ask that question and we give space for people to answer that question, and we start really getting all those answers out on the table, my next question is, what does that response reveal about what people believe about the children you're working with? And then the next question is, what do those beliefs mean for you and why you're in this role? And how you've been socialized and brought toward and moved toward doing this work. And what does that mean about the power relationships between you as potentially probably a non-disabled educator working with students with disabilities, students of color with disabilities as a white non-disabled special education teacher. And we start to have that conversation in a gentle, in a caring way. And I can show and share so many examples of how I played right into that in my work, in my career. That's what I'm trying to do in my work, is to say that there are underlying socializations around disability and race that allow special education to be used as a tool of benevolence on its face. But when we start to look at the impacts on self-concept, on mental well-being and health, on friendship, on any number of things in a school setting, in a community setting, there are some things we have to deal with as a field, some legacies we have to deal with. And so that's what I'm hoping I want people to know about my work, Sarup. I'm not out to get special education. I'm out to examine how special education has been positioned and utilized, and the ways we can do better, because that's what we're hopefully all trying to do. So that's what I'm hoping for. That's what I'd like people to understand about my work. Thanks for the question.
Okay. So looking at the time, maybe we'll pause our questions here, and Pablo and Kathleen. Well, Kathleen, you already asked a provocative question, but from slightly a different perspective, what questions do you have for the folks here? Pablo, anything you'd want to ask people here? And ask us anything. It can be about the best, I don't know, gelato shop, or it can be something about working in the college or being at ASU. So anything you'd like folks to respond to.
Yes, absolutely. So I had the chance to meet with some people and ask specific questions that I have about the school. But one question that I always like to ask, because I always get the most unexpected answers, it's about what advice do you have for a junior professor that is starting at ASU?
Okay, folks, what advice do you have? jump in. You can turn off or you can unmute and just jump in if you got something to share.
Sherman has advice, don't be afraid of IRB. Our staff colleagues are great. So you can do your research, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you can also tell me over coffee. So.
Maybe they have advice that they'd prefer not to share in a public forum. So
Like is around at ASU, so make sure all of your stuff is on wheels.
all of your stuff is on wheels.
Yeah, that's great advice. Have fun. This job is a great privilege to enjoy it.
Yes, how true. Yeah, how true. It's easy, particularly when you're new, to get bogged down and overwhelmed with, the sense that you've got to do all these things to meet expectations for tenure or whatever. And it is important to step back and say, wow, this is a really amazing job that I have. I get to, talk about ideas with people and try to make a positive change in the lives of kids and adults. Like, what could be better than that these days? So, yeah, Jeannie, have fun outside of work too. Any recommendations for what kind of fun that might be? Particularly now that it's cooler and you can actually do things outside, like meaning outdoors, which is great. Yes, great hikes. So yeah, take advantage of that.
Oh, wow. That's good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fabulous. Absolutely. Desert Botanical Garden, for sure. And please take note, there were some great coffee shops shared in the chat. So please take advantage of those if coffee shops are your thing. And the Heard Museum, yeah, that's a great resource. Other question, Kathleen, do you have questions for the folks here?
Probably. I think I do. Thank you, Punya. Thanks everybody who had all the comments as well. I think I have a question about faculty and staff governance structures. So if folks would share, maybe this is more ad hoc or anecdotal or formal, but the different opportunities for faculty and staff to be a part of shared governance and decision-making at the university level and the college level, and if there are any particular ways of doing that you might recommend, like kind of must join sort of situations, if you want to be part of that.
Hey, Audrey, that's a question for you, at least within the college. Do you want to say anything or suggest anything?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Sure, Kathleen?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Audrey. I was asking about opportunities for shared governance within the college and at the university, and whether there are particular like committees or structures that you would recommend new faculty join so that they kind of know how things work governance-wise.
Oh gosh, I don't know much about the university level committees and so forth. I know that there's I'll have to think about this and maybe get back to you. I know that there's one for new faculty that probably would be a good committee to get involved with. It's not even a committee, it's just a group. And then I know that there's one for women faculty that I used to be involved with, FWA, and I can't remember what the acronym stands for, Faculty Women's Association. There it is. In terms of college governance, I have 5 standing committees on which people can sit at all different levels: clinical faculty, and then tenure eligible faculty, or career track faculty, excuse me, and then tenure eligible faculty. So there's 5 standing committees. If you all have access to the hub, which you should have access to the hub, you can see the committees there and you can see the membership. We run elections. I'm the chair of the governance committee. We run elections for committees every spring and sometimes in the fall, just depending on people who leave positions early or whatever may be. And so there's a lot of opportunity at the college level for governance. We also have built, especially last year, a set of like ad hoc committees, including a social committee that Jill mentioned prior, including a teaching evaluation committee that is led by J. Brian Henderson, that we're looking at, for example, our student evaluation instrument and peer observation protocols for faculty throughout the college. And then Betty is in charge of a faculty excellence committee. And so there's a lot of options for committees, although we are still trying to build more committees, especially to get more career track faculty involved in the shared governance of the college. So, but you can reach out to me anytime by email. But also take a look at the hub. Everyone should take a look at the hub because that's where it has most information that's up to date as of, an hour ago.
Given the results of our recent election. So yes, I can recommend Audrey as a resource highly. I mean, she's been involved in a lot of different things in the college and beyond. And in the chat, I actually just posted, I think Amanda posted a link to the Faculty Women's Association. Recently, they announced their fall reception on November 6th. So that would be a good way to meet some folks beyond the college there. There's a link to the hub, I think, that Heather posted. And Sherman, do you want to say anything more about the Senate or some of the things that you posted?
I'm not sure I'm really highly qualified because I only was on the Senate for one semester as a fill-in. But there, it's called the University Senate here. That's the faculty governance body. And there are a number of standing committees, and then there are university committees that sit in administrative offices, like the university-wide TNP committee, which Audrey, are you sitting on it now, or have you? I forget who's on, but I know you've been on it in the past. And then a university hearing board, which is for like the final appeal for students under various categories. The Commission on the Status of Women, which I think sits in the President's office, and those sorts of various bodies. I don't know that there's like a single list of all of those.
Thank you. And I see that like Heather also put just the college's governance structure link there. That's helpful to see that all in one place.
Yeah. And again, reiterating, looking through the hub. I mean, the hub now has, in the last couple of years since its inception, now is an amazing resource. It's almost to the point where it's kind of hard to navigate because there's so much information there. And I see in the chat, Amanda, sounds like Amanda, you've been involved at the FWA. Do you want to say anything more about that and their reception?
Only that I've been going, I think since, well, except for during the pandemic, since I got here, and I've always just really enjoyed the speakers and learning more about what's going on around campus. I think, Margarita, you might have been there maybe last year at the reception as well. Generally, I'm the only person I recognize. So I would love to have some friends come and join. It's, good food, and you get to meet people from all across the university, men and women. It's not just women. So, and lately they've been giving us free books. That's where I got my Freiburg book. It was one of the, it was the year that they gave out banned books. And last year was some self-help books. And so it's always, I think it's a good time. So.
Thanks, Amanda. Pablo or Kathleen, other questions?
Like Pablo, I've been bending a lot of people's ears lately.
Great.
In a non-recorded setting.
Well, and back to Pablo's original question, I think you're doing exactly what one of the things that we would recommend is going out and talking to a lot of people, getting to know folks here, having coffee, lunch, what have you, and get different perspectives on what life as a faculty member is like here. And our college is so large, just, reflecting how large the university is.
Huge.
That, people have a lot of different experiences to share. So it's really informative and doing a lot of really cool work. So that's the other thing, just really interesting to learn more about what folks are doing. So So, well, Sarup, should we wrap up? We just have a few more minutes.
Yeah. You want to talk
Okay.
about the next session?
Yeah, so this coming week, this next Friday, we don't have a just an hour scheduled. So because of folks having to go to West for the all college meeting and other events scheduled, we decided to skip a week. So the next just an hour will be on Friday, October 4th. So that's 2 weeks from today. We'll be sending out an announcement, but really excited because we'll have a session that will be facilitated by Antonio Duran, who you know is heading the Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College Inclusive Excellence Council. He and some other members of the council are going to be facilitating the first of a couple of conversations we've scheduled this semester during the just an hour time slot. The topic for their session is understanding the landscape of anti-DEI legislation facing higher education and resistance efforts. So it'll be a nice opportunity to get a broader perspective about what's going on around the nation in relationship to these very important topics. So again, we'll send out a calendar invitation, but just wanted to get you thinking ahead of time. And we will, I think we've been missing sending invitations out to doctoral students, but as a reminder, these sessions are open to, we welcome student participation, and we also welcome participation from folks who are outside the college. So if you get an invitation and can think of someone else who might be interested, please feel free to forward it to those other folks. So with that, I want to thank Pablo and Kathleen and welcome them again. Thanks for responding to all our questions and for answering, or for asking some of your own. And thanks to everyone else who's here and joined us for this conversation. So we appreciate it. Yeah, it was great. So with that, hope you all have a great weekend. Enjoy some of this good weather before it gets hot again, which I guess it's threatening to do. And hopefully we'll see a lot of you folks in person next Friday at our all college meeting. So thanks again. And it's just on the hour. So with that, we'll sign off. Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. See ya.